OneNote and go to our shared OneNote folder. So I want to explain to you a little bit about the issue that I'm having and how you guys are going to be able to help with it. So I've been running into, let's say, some resource issues on my tablet here in the last few weeks. So I've been running out of disk space. And the issue I've finally figured out is that with these shared OneNote notebooks, my computer is creating a temporary backup file for everything that's shared with me. So like I have, 150 or 200 of these shared notebooks between all my classes, and every page that you have in there is being backed up on my machine, which is like 40 or 50 gigs of space is what it turns out being. So I don't have, I'm running out of room to do any of the recordings or anything during class, and I'm consistently deleting these temporary backup files so I can do a recording, but as soon as I open OneNote, they start syncing and coming back in. And so it's like this shell game of moving memory between the trash can and these temporary it's just a big mess. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you guys to help me with this, because we're going to move everything out of your shared OneNote folder other than the stuff you're actively working on. So Amy, I'm going to use yours as an example. Is that okay? Okay. Amy's OneNote folder here, she has a bunch of tabs. So we have a note tab, we have a homework 1 tab, or chapter 1 tab, a chapter 2 tab, and a chapter 3 tab. Some of you might just have one tab for everything. It's fine, whatever. But what we're going to do is so anything other than the things that I've checked, which for you guys is everything other than homework 10, right? We're going to move into our non-shared notebook. So you can move the tabs individually by doing the move or copy option, or if you want, you can just take all the pages and cut and paste them somewhere else. Either one is fine. So if you wanted to do that, if you click the first page on your list and you hold down the shift button and you click the last one, it'll highlight the entire list. And if there was something in there that you didn't want, if you press the control button and hold that down and then click the one that maybe you didn't want highlighted, it'll unhighlight it. You see how we unhighlighted that one? And then once you've got highlighted what you need to have highlighted, if you right click in there, you can choose the cut command. And then you can just back out into your non-shared notebook and make a section for this class, and then you could paste the pages in under the pages, and then just everything is gone and it's into your shared or your non-shared notebook. Everything that was shared with me is now out of the shared section, and I can lose these temporary backup files permanently, which is nice. So from kind of here on out, every time we do a homework check, that following week after I've checked the homework, if you can take everything that I've checked and move it for me out of the shared notebook into your own non-shared section, that would be excellent. Sergio? Sure. So we're in our shared notebook somewhere. And we'll look at yours, Sergio, since you're asking about it. So you have everything in one tab. So we're just going to click on the first thing in the pages list. I'm going to press and hold down the shift button and press the last thing, and everything is highlighted. So hold down the shift button and then click the last thing on the list. What? Oh, good. All right. So, Sergio, you don't have chapter or the homework 10 in here, but everything else has been checked. So this is all good to move. If you right-click anywhere in here, you can choose the cut command. And then you can go back out to your own notebook that's not shared and put that in one of the tabs in there. Like make a tab for the class and put it in there. Does that feel okay?
Which notebook was it?
The green one would be the one at the top with your name on it.
I was in my tab, right? I cut.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So you go here, and you go to the one with your name on it.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing.
And you just make a tab for the class. Right-click over here and press paste. And they're all going to pile in there in a second. There's a lot of things, so it won't take a second.
I deleted everything.
Well, you mean you just moved it to
Yeah.
to the invisible cutting pad or whatever. But it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and now you're all set.
Okay. So you'll
It'll
be able to see this.
Yeah, and eventually it's thinking because it was a lot of stuff.
Okay. So you'll be able to see all this stuff?
I will not be able to see any of those things anymore, but the things in the shared notebook I'll still be able to see. But I've already seen everything I need to from this.
Okay.
Right? That's why we're putting them somewhere where I don't get a backup. That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's the other one. So I just clicked open other notebooks, and that's your other one.
I think I already got it.
Okay, you've already cut it or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, so you just, can make a section, paste it in there, and you can rename this section whatever you want.
Gotcha.
But it should be, it's pasting now, so I think you're good.
Got you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. I'm so confused.
Alyssa, you got it?
Yep.
Okay. If anybody else needs help, I'm happy to help. Again, you guys are doing me a solid. This will help make things run a little bit smoother on my end, which is awesome, because before it was like every day was a battle and trying to clear up enough space to do a recording, which is kind of a hassle, Okay. Is anybody still working on doing this? We're good? Okie dokie. Go back to here. And I'll go back in my content library. So just as a heads up here, at this point, I'm not going to move anything in the content library. So that's going to just kind of stay. Everything I'm going to leave that's in the content library now, I'm going to leave there for the time being at least. If that proves to be an issue too, space-wise, I'll let you know before I do something else with it, and I'll let you know what I'm going to do with it. Worst case scenario, it'll be one of those things where I take all the old chapters and I just move them into PowerSchool somewhere. I'd prefer not to do that because it's super convenient to be able to look at what it is before you decide you want to take it. Where you can't do that on PowerSchool, all you get is like a list of files to download or whatever, which isn't the end of the world, but like this is so convenient. I'd rather keep this content library working the way it's working. And I don't see any reason why I wouldn't still be able to do that for the active chapter, even if I run into some space issues. But some of these old chapters I might end up moving into PowerSchool, but I'll let you know before I do anything on that front. Okay? Cool. All right. Before we get going too far, I want to point out too that I've moved in answer keys for all of the homeworks here for the rest of this chapter. So last time we met, we talked about homework, or the lesson associated with homework 10. That was the last set of topics for this chapter 3. And before we move on and take some questions, let me talk about the test format, just so that'll probably help focus whatever it is we want to ask questions about. Sound good? So I'm going to reference the test review in doing that, because the format of the test and the format of the test review are almost the same, or basically the same, I should say. So on the test, the first 3 questions are going to be just like the first 3 questions in the review. So I'm asking you to solve by hand these, some 3 systems using either substitution or elimination, and then ask you to check your answer using Gaussian elimination. So you don't have to do anything other than show me like the matrix that came out of your calculator. That's all you'd have to really write down. But I want you to check your answer with the calculator, and it's a good free way to let you know whether you made a mistake on your substitution or elimination without making like an additional separate question, right? These are questions you're already going to do, and let's be honest, you're already going to check them anyways after I showed you how to check them. So like, why not make that just part of the problem? The next question is, I'm going to give you a linear program, so similar in scale to this one, where I just have 3 constraints to check. So you graph your 3 constraints or whatever. I think they end up looking like a triangle. You have to identify the 3 vertices for your overlapping shaded area, and then check which one gives you, in this case, the minimum value by plugging the x, y's into the cost function there. So very similar to something we did on homework 7. The next question is, I'll give you like one of these setting up a linear programming problem from a situation. This is almost identical to the problem, one of the problems we saw in homework 7. We just changed some of the numbers. The test will be a similar setup where it'll be a situation you're very familiar with maybe some different numbers. But here all I'd ask you to do is identify what the variables are representing, the cost function, and then list the constraints, just like we did in the assignment. But there's no solving to do. There's nothing to do past setting this up, right? I don't need you to do anything with it after you've set it up. The next page, I have these 6 matrix operation problems. I'm asking you to do these and show your work. Now, I'm not a fool. I know that every single one of you should be checking this on your calculator as well, right? We showed you last time how to use your calculator to do matrix operations. You should absolutely do that here as well. There's no good reason to get any of these wrong, if you've made a mistake or not. It's like, ooh, I'm not doing that right. Let me think about it again. I mean, you need to do enough work to show what we're doing. Like when we've done these in class, when I do them, I show you the work that I'm doing to do it. But the answer that you're getting, the calculator can tell you whether your answer is correct or not, right? And then the last 2 questions, I'm going to give you a system. The first one, I'm going to ask you to set up the matrix equation to solve that system, show what you'd be typing into your calculator, and then type in your calculator to get the answer. I don't need you to actually perform any of the matrix operations by hand. You're just going to show the setup, in this case, show the matrix equation, like the AX equals B, what A is, X is, and B is. And then show what you typed in your calculator to get the answer to solve for matrix X. And then what the result is, right? Is that okay? Direction-wise, you understand what I'm saying? Taylor? I think there were 6. It's the same number as what's on that that page. Let me count real quick. 6 to 11. Yeah, 6. And then the last question will be the same thing except using Kramer's rule. So again, you'll set up, x is equal to this determinant over this determinant, and then don't actually do the determinants by hand. Just type in your calculator to get what they equal. And then the same thing for y or z or whatever. So again, you're just showing the setup, and then you're using your calculator to do the actual matrix operation. Because I don't need this test to take like 2.5 hours as you're trying to do these things by hand, because that stinks, right? There's some stuff that I need you to show by hand, but not everything. And some of these things are like, the point of them is that the calculator does this really nicely. So like, let's use the calculator to do it. That's half of what I want you to be able to do. Does that sound okay to everybody in terms of like what I'm expecting you to be able to show or do? Okay. So we can take some time now and answer some kind of specific or general questions, and then I'm going to give you the rest of the time in class to just work on the review or whatever else. Okay? Mackenzie. Sure. Okay. Okay. So the matrix equation is always of the form AX is equal to B, right? So our A is our coefficients matrix. So it's just the coefficients from my system. Cool. The X is just the variables. Since this is a 3 by 3, I know one has to be a 3 by 1, right? Because those inner dimensions have to match up. And then my B is always the solutions. And then we showed you guys last time that the solution to this is always going to be A inverse times B. So that's on the test or whatever, all I would need you to do is to write down what it is you're typing into your calculator. And then we'll just use our calculator to find that value, or find the result of that matrix, or matrix operations. I would never ask you to do that by hand. Yes. In fact, we haven't even talked about how you would do that by hand, because there's not a convenient formula like there is for the 2 by 2. So not something I would expect you to do by hand. In fact, the way that in practice that we would do this by hand is using Gaussian elimination. Yeah, so on this sheet, I didn't need you to do any of the matrix operations by hand. This sheet, everything can be done with the calculator after you show the setup. Jack.
On homework number 9, number 5, order, I had a little bit of
Okay. So the answer to that is it doesn't matter as long as you don't go out of order when you do the sub problems. So like, for example, you could do those two things first and then get that answer and then do those two and then get that answer and do those two. Or you could do like, okay, I'm going to do those two and then those two and get the answer and then do that. And it doesn't really matter. What you can't do is you can't do like this one with this one. because now you're going out of order as far as the left to rightness goes. And it's okay to do that because if I look at these, all of the adjacent dimensions match up. So this certainly has an answer. Usually what I do is I just go straight from left to right. The only thing that you can do out of order is the scalar multiplication. You could do that all the way at first or all the way at the end. I typically like to just wait to the end to do it because it just makes the matrix multiplication that much more tedious when the numbers get bigger. But that's the only thing that you can do out of order. Because scalar multiplication, whether you do like matrix times 3 or 3 times the matrix, same result. But the matrix multiplication is not that way. That one you can't goof around with the order. It has to go from left to right. Does that feel okay? Cool. Edmund.
So for number 11,
Okay.
is that
Yes. And the reason it is because this is not a square matrix. So, well, this is not an inverse of a matrix. This is the reciprocal of a determinant. But the determinant here is undefined because it's not square. So, like, I could do, like this. So the determinant is 2 minus 15. And the reciprocal of that then is 1 over negative 13. As opposed to this one where this is an inverse. Because it's around a matrix. A determinant, though, is just a number. When I have a negative 1 exponent on a number, that's a reciprocal. So just, I wanted to clear that, make sure I was clear about that, because the reason this is the square matrix, there's no inverse going on here. It's the determinant needs the square matrix. Are you okay with that? And that's a subtle difference there. Amy. Mm-hmm. The only method that can tell the difference is the Gaussian elimination. So, oops, I don't want to write on this sheet. So the way you can tell is if you get a row of all zeros, that's infinitely many. If you get all zeros and then not a zero, that's no solution. Because remember what a row in Gaussian elimination means is each of those numbers is a coefficient, where the last one is what it equals. So like 4 zeros means x plus y plus z is equal to 0, which is just 0 equals 0, which is what meant infinitely many solutions before. If I had like 3 zeros and then a 1, what that would mean is 0 equals 1, which is exactly what no solution was before. Be careful though, because if you had like 1, 0, 0, that's okay. That's x plus 0y plus 0z is equal to 0, or just x equals 0, which is fine. Like that doesn't mean no solution or whatever. You get what I mean? So it definitely matters where the zeros are and where the non-zero is. It has to be everything 0 except for the last entry for no solution. And you just need one row like that. It'll always be the last row. The way the Gaussian elimination works, the calculator will always put that as the last row. Does that feel okay? Yep. And the other ones you can't tell the difference. So if you got an undefined at any point for the other ones, those methods can't tell the difference. That's their major drawback. Other questions? Anybody else? Okay. Let's stop here then. You guys can spend the rest of the time working on the review, or if you still have stuff to clean up on 10, That's fine too. You can work on that as well. No big deal. If you run into anything you want to ask questions about, don't hesitate to come up and talk to me. I'll be happy to answer your questions. The plan for the test for you guys today is Wednesday, right? So Friday for test? Okay. And again, the test format will look just like the review. Okay? So that's a good place to practice from. You can always go back to the other homeworks if you want more practice on a specific type of problem. But, you know, the review should be a reasonable facsimile of what the test will look like. Okie dokie? Okay. Yes, Loretta. Of course you can. You're welcome.